Medicare will start sending out cards next year with new IDs and without Social Security numbers, all in an effort to prevent identity theft. But scammers are taking advantage of this upcoming change, especially right now at the start of Medicare open enrollment. They say they're from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and that you need to verify your personal information in order to receive your new card. Other versions of the scam claim you need to pay for your new card and threaten your benefits if you don't. Know this: Medicare will never email or call asking for your personal information, and the new cards will eventually be sent to all 60 million beneficiaries starting next year, free of charge. The best thing to do if you get these calls or emails, hang up and delete. And for more information about this and other breaking scams, visit aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork.
Our special topic today is Medicare fraud, and we have a guest, Kelly McElhenney, who is the outreach coordinator for COVE and Senior Medicare Patrol SMP. Last year, somewhere between $17 billion and $57 billion was lost to Medicare fraud. It's a serious matter because it's adding to the cost of our health care and obviously to the expenses that we all have to pay out of pocket. That doesn't include the amount of money that is stolen from individuals based on Medicare fraud where they end up paying money. It's assumed that the amount that may be the total is somewhere closer to $100 billion a year, a number that increases every year as more and more people become eligible for Medicare and then become susceptible to the fraud. So we're going to spend some time talking about that. And again, if you are younger, pay attention because odds are somebody that you're very close to could be a victim. Kelly, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and what Medicare is for those who aren't really sure and may be approaching Medicare age, and also what COVE and SMP are doing.
Well, thanks, Elliot. Thanks for having me today. Yes, my name is Kelly McElhenney, and I am the Southern Vermont Regional Coordinator for Outreach and Volunteers for the Senior Medicare Patrol program of the Community of Vermont Elders. And what we do at the Senior Medicare Patrol program is we empower and educate senior citizens, their caregivers, and beneficiaries themselves on preventing and reporting Medicare fraud, error, abuse, and waste. This is a program of the Agency on Community Living and the Department of Health and Human Services. We are part of the anti-fraud program of Medicare. And as many of you know, Medicare is the nationalized health care program that we have for our seniors and those under the age of 65 on disability. And you pay in your 30 credits over your lifetime of work, and at 65 or when you become disabled, you are eligible to then receive health care. And what your Medicare covers under your Part A is your hospitalization, under your Part B is your provider and your outpatient coverage. Under what we call C on Medicare, those are Medicare Advantage plans. Under Part D, that is your prescription plan. And then we also deal with supplemental plans, which cover your 20% that you're responsible under your Part B and your copays and deductibles. So what we do at the Community of Vermont Elders is we are your senior citizen legislative advocacy agency that is based in Montpelier. And we are the lobbyists who go to the State House in Montpelier to lobby and advocate for issues for seniors and vulnerable populations or people who are disabled. Some of the bigger initiatives that COVE has taken on are LIHEAP, expanded funding for the Low-Income Heating Assistance Program, expanded funding for our Extra Help programs, which is our subsidized program for our Part D plans and our Part B plans here in Vermont for some of our more vulnerable seniors. We also deal with some kinship issues now in terms of giving grandparents more rights when they're raising their grandchildren. So all things senior citizen or vulnerable people go through COVE to the Legislative State House, and we give testimony on issues and how they'll impact seniors. And we've dealt with advocating for the Choices for Care program, and we we have a very strong voice in Montpelier because we've been around since 1981. We're a very respected organization when it comes to advocating for senior issues. So then one of the programs the Cove offers, in addition to its programs, is the SMP program, or the Senior Medicare Patrol program. And the Senior Medicare Patrol program is in all 50 states and 4 territories. And as Elliot pointed out, for a $585 billion program, which is Medicare on a whole, upwards of $90 billion a year is fraud. And it comes from a number of different sources that Elliot and I are going to discuss today. But we do want to make you aware of ways that you can combat that. And the number one way, which we will discuss further, is reading your Medicare summary notices.
Okay, thank you. You know, at the beginning of this segment of the show, there was a short video clip from AARP that was discussing the change with Medicare cards coming in 2018.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about why the card is changing, and also something about the current level of scams, types of scams that we see happening either by phone or email.
Okay, well, great. I believe under the Affordable Care Act, there was legislation that was included that said that when we transitioned into national healthcare marketplaces, but also for Medicare funding, we needed to remove Social Security numbers from Medicare cards. So what HHS and the Agency of Community Living, HHS is the Health and Human Services Division, came up with was what they have dubbed the Social Security Removal Initiative, or the SSRI program of Medicare this year. And what's happening is we all know that we guard our Medicare cards because it is our Social Security number. Well, starting in April of 2018, new Medicare cards are going to be issued that are now non-identifying, nondescript, alphanumeric, randomly chosen numbers that will now become your new Medicare number. And we're going to start with people who are new to Medicare in 2018, and then we're going to be completed with the entire turnover by April of 2019. And after April of 2019, you'll no longer be able to use your Social Security-based Medicare card. So everyone should be aware. The only caveat is that you need to update your address with the Social Security Administration. If someone gives you a phone call or sends you a piece of information in the mail that asks you to verify your information to receive your new Medicare card, or asks you for payment for your new Medicare card, be aware that those are the current scams that we see going on. Medicare and Social Security are not going to call you and ask you to identify your Medicare number or your Social Security number. So the scam artists are hoping that they're going to catch you off guard and you're not going to realize that you didn't have to update this information with anyone as long as your information is current. And if you receive a Social Security check or your Medicare and you currently receive it at your address, you don't need to take any initiative. And there are further instructions on the inside cover of the new to Medicare books that are coming out in January. So just be mindful of the fact that you're going to start seeing a lot of information coming across your screen. It's called Guard Your Card campaign. And as we transition to the new cards, there are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to try to take advantage of this transition.
Thank you. I think it's also a good idea for folks who have questions about this that they can contact SMP, and we're going to be going through some of the contact numbers for Medicare and SMP at the end of the segment. But I also want to mention that you can go online if you have a computer, and you can go to Medicare.gov, which is the official Medicare website, or you can go to Vermont SMP's website, and you can find out where to get the information that you need. They list phone numbers, so if you feel uncomfortable using a computer or a tablet, you can always make a phone call and get the information that you are in need of. So we'll cover those things at the end of the session, but I want to go back to SMP.
Yes.
And I want to talk about what SMP is doing, because from my understanding, there are really three issues that you deal with: error, abuse, and fraud.
Yes.
And fraud that can take place by a medical provider. It can take place by a beneficiary, somebody who's faking an ailment or an illness in order to either sell the equipment or somehow get a benefit. And then, of course, there are con artists who are committing fraud too. So there are three areas, and maybe if you could just do a quick overview of error, abuse, and fraud, we can get an understanding of that.
Yes. Well, one of the things that we deal with is empowering beneficiaries to report error, abuse, and fraud. And what do we mean when we say Medicare error, abuse, and fraud? Well, the number one way you're going to find a discrepancy in your Medicare or Medicare charges is by reviewing your Medicare summary notice. And if you don't recognize a charge on your Medicare summary notice for services that you never received, or equipment that you never received, or visiting a doctor that you're not familiar with, these are ways that you as the beneficiary can help us prevent fraudulent charges to your Medicare number. Now, error can be something as simple as a billing coding error. And with the changes to the ICD-9 to ICD-10 codes, there is room for a lot of human error when we do our input for billing for doctors, when we do the transcription. So that's one way that Medicare loses funds through erroneous billing mistakes. And those are usually pretty easy to resolve. We give the provider a call, we let them know what's going on, and we ask them to fix it and resubmit the claim to Medicare so that those charges are no longer reflected according to your beneficiary number. Now, when you get your next Medicare summary notice, if those changes have not been reflected in your next summary notice, but we made the commitment to communicate with the provider that there was an error, now we say that might go into the realm of abuse. And when we talk about abuse, Medicare will give you an opportunity if you have outdated equipment or you have a bad infrastructure mainframe system and you lose data, or your server's constantly going down, or whatever issue you might have. Medicare will give you the opportunity to make those fixes. So I let you know about the billing error. I give you a call back because the next summary notice does not reflect that that's been changed. So now we think that you're not following along with the guidelines of what Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services requires, and that you're at risk of having your provider status pulled if you are a medical provider. And now we know it's going into abuse because you're not paying any attention to our indication that there's an error. We've asked you to change it and you haven't. So then we wait another cycle of 120 days for the next summary notice, and if we still don't see those changes reflected in that Medicare summary notice, that's when we start to suspect that this is intentional and it's an upcoding or some other issue going on like that, and that's when we go into the realm of fraud. Now, the beauty of the SMP program and the Senior Medicare Patrol program is that we don't have to have proof that fraud has been committed like other law enforcement agencies do. We're not a law enforcement agency. We're simply a reporting agency. But we do have a direct link to the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services so that we can start any kind of nationalized trend that might be going on with different supply companies or providers. So we do have the strength in the ability that if there's a durable medical equipment provider in California doing something very strange or bordering on fraud, and they're doing it in New York also, the SMP program can congregate in that information, and then we can see nationalized trends going on. Now, durable medical equipment providers are probably our biggest area of fraud and scam, next to erroneous billing mistakes. And durable medical equipment providers are basically anywhere from a motorized wheelchair to a CPAP machine to a diabetic testing equipment. So there's a lot of different ways that they can scam, but some of the more popular ways are, I don't know if you've seen the ad during MASH on TV for U.S. Health Supply, but they're offering braces of all sorts.
Let's take a look at an example of this. This happens to be a postcard that was received by a Medicare recipient in the Brattleboro area. And if we look at this carefully, we can get a feeling for how these types of scams are aimed at individuals. Usually they have a very official kind of look to them. For instance, if you look at this particular postcard, on one side it shows deliver exclusively to, and it's targeted for an individual. In the scam world, we call this spear phishing, where the attempt is to gain information from somebody using very particular information of an individual. Secondly, the card shows claims document registered, which sounds pretty official and makes you think this is an official document. And at the bottom of the front side of the card, there's a warning to individuals not to tamper with the mail. And quite often when you see this warning, it should be a flashing light that maybe there's something a little strange, because you don't usually see a warning like this even on government documents. On the back side of the card, again, very official looking card, covered by Medicare, which gives you a sense that this is going to be free. In bold print, large print, it shows reduce your pain. So it's an attempt to get you to sense that, boy, this is going to help me. And then a release code. I don't really know what the release code is, but the understanding is that when you call them, you call the number that's provided, you need to give them the release code. And notice that there's a claim deadline, May 15th, in this case 2017. And my understanding is that Medicare doesn't put deadlines on
No,
items.
they don't. No, you have 23 preventive procedures that are free to you under Medicare, but there is no expiration on those. And some of them are annual, some of them are once in your lifetime. It just depends on those 23.
So if you're eligible, you're eligible.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not you're eligible until January 15th or some other date.
Absolutely.
I happened to call this company to see what they were looking for. And I told them that a friend of mine had received a card. I didn't get one, but that I had back pain and I needed some help, but I didn't have a release code number. And the response was, oh, you don't need one. And after some conversation, we got down to what these individuals were really looking for. They wanted my Social Security number via my Medicare card.
Yes.
And knowing my name, knowing my address, and now having my Social Security number would give them a great opportunity to commit identity theft.
Absolutely.
So beyond the potential for fraud taking place in the sale of equipment that wasn't necessary, here's a chance for severe damage to an individual as well. So the con artists are out there, and they're using very clever approaches to deal with individuals and make you feel special and make you feel that you're being approached by somebody in a very official manner.
Yes. And the insidious nature of this type of a spear phishing campaign is that you will receive your back brace by giving them this information. So when someone says it's going to be free to you from Medicare, I just need your Medicare number, we'll know that Medicare is going to be charged for that, so it's not technically free. But what happens is they're going to send you a really nice polypropylene brace that you could have gone out to Rite Aid and bought yourself, and they're going to charge Medicare $768 for that brace. So that is how we don't necessarily see the fraud taking place immediately. And just imagine if any of these DME companies got a hold of all 80 million beneficiaries come 2025 and charged everybody just $1. They just walked away with $80 million. So there's a lot of ways that you guys can help prevent this by reviewing your Medicare summary notice and not responding to phishing scams like this.
And I think it's also important to know that if you need a particular medical device or medication, you need to have a doctor's prescription for it.
Yes.
So somewhere along the line in the scam, somebody's also using a medical professional in order to obtain the rights to your benefits.
Yes.
And I also want to mention that the suggestion to review your benefit statement is very critical, and it's something that we in AARP recommend people do with all of their regular documents, your bank statements, that you do it with your credit card statements, because that's going to be the first line of defense if somebody has broken into your identity and then started to use your credit cards and your identity to obtain loans or to purchase items. So it tends to be a very serious matter.
Absolutely.
You know.
And remember, if someone does get a hold of your claim member and submits a claim for a particular procedure or a particular service, you are no longer eligible for that service anymore if you can't provide or prove that your medical identity has been stolen. So that's one of the really big factors for this.
Now, when I started, I said it's very critical for family members to be involved.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering if you have any suggestions or ideas about what family members can do when dealing with an elderly parent or friend or neighbor who may be subject to a scam such as what we've talked about.
Well, one of the things that we've learned through a new program through COVE, which is called Building Bridges to Services for Seniors, is that people are very reluctant to report that they've been scammed because of the stigma to it. So we're trying to lessen the stigma around reporting if you have been taken advantage of or exploited in any way. Now, what we in COVE and SMP encourage is that because intergenerations are now cohabitating, living more in nuclear families, having regular Sunday dinners, having grandparent to grandchild, live in relationships now, that if you are not the person who deals with the Medicare in your family or for your parents or your grandparents, that you at least check in with them once in a while with regard to that. See how it's going, see if they've had any issues. One of the things that SMP can provide you with is that if you have inadvertently given someone your Social Security number over the phone because they caught you off guard asking you to update your Medicare information, we can put you on a protected list so that you get flagged when claims come through for a second level of eyes and review to make sure that this isn't a fraudulent claim coming through. So we really want grandchildren and parents and grandparents and the whole family to really be involved in what's going on with the Medicare beneficiary in your family to know whether or not there is anything that has been compromised or there is any weird situations that might be going on that they're afraid or embarrassed to discuss.
Thank you. We'd like to share some information with you about who you can contact and where you can contact them. There are a number of easy to access places. One of them is the official Medicare website, which is www.medicare.gov. Again, as I said earlier, sometimes people feel a little uncomfortable using a computer. There is an 800 number. It's 800-633-4227. Vermont Senior Medicare Patrol, the SMP program, can be reached online at vermontelders.org/VT_SMP/. That will put you at the website, but again, there's a phone number you can call, 888-865-2683. The Vermont State Health Insurance Assistance Program, which is called SHIP, can be reached at vermont4a.org, or the telephone number is 800-642-5119. And then there's also the Vermont government website. The department in the government used to be called Banking and Insurance, and today it's called the Department of Financial Regulation. And that department is dfr.vermont.gov. They have an insurance division, so if you have questions about supplemental insurances or if you feel that fraud is taking place, there is a state government office that can assist you. And they have a phone number, 800-964-1784. All those phone numbers are toll-free, so you don't have to worry about picking up the phone and making the call. I think it's really important to go back to what Kelly said about the discomfort and embarrassment that people have about reporting. We know that in Medicare fraud, as well as all other fraud, what we see, what we know is reported, is really the tip of the iceberg. And as a result, the amount is not known, but it's much larger than what we publicly acknowledge to be what is fraud in this.
That we can track.
Case, that we can track. You know, it is a very embarrassing thing to say, I was taken in a scam. But know that, you know, for most of us, it's going to happen at some point or another.
Yes.
Con artists are very good at what they do. And a skillful con artist knows when to reach you. If you're confused, if it's a time when you're very busy, if you're distracted, and it doesn't matter what your age is. Young adults have that same issue. If you're distracted, you're a target. It has nothing to do with age, has nothing to do with gender, has nothing to do with race. So don't make the decisions that are going to get you in trouble financially when you're in a bit of a stir for a condition. Con artists refer to that as being under the ether.
The ether, yes, or
And,
a heightened emotional sense.
Yeah, and your emotions are kind of out of control. So I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Elliot.
And hopefully we can help some people
Yes.
become safer and less prone to victimization.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot.